Titled, After 3 years of censorship, mainstream media now confirms that COVID jabs may to blame for increase in excess deaths. If the Telegraph report had been published in 2021, several million lives would have been saved. Well, if they tune into Zollner report, they would have been saved as well. Introduction. If this report by the Telegraph had been published in early 2021, several million lives would have been saved. But in 2021, censorship was imposed. Honest journalism was silenced. The media was supportive of the fear campaign. The Telegraph report by Science editor Sarah Knapton, 5 June 2024, pertains to researchers from Netherlands analyzed data from 47 Western countries and discovered there may be more than 3 million excess deaths since 2020, with the trend continuing despite the fallout of vaccines and containment measures. COVID jabs may to blame for increase in excess deaths. There's an article you can take a look at. They said the unprecedented figures raised serious concerns and called on governments to fully investigate the underlying causes, including possible vaccine harms. Expecting the government to investigate what they pushed is completely insane. I just added that. Writing in the BMJ Public Health, the authors from Vrije University Amsterdam said, although COVID-19 vaccines were provided to guard civilians from suffering morbidity and mortality by the COVID-19 virus, suspected adverse events have been documented as well. Both medical professionals and citizens have reported serious injury and deaths following vaccination to various official databases in the Western world. Surprise, surprise, huh? Click here to read the full article on Telegraph. There's a link you can go to. Comments and analysis. From early 2021, coinciding with the rollout of the COVID vaccine. Who rolled out the I know, Donald Trump. He's the guy that rolled out COVID vaccine with the harbinger of death, Dr. Anthony Fauci, Dr. Deborah Birx. Remember that? An upward trend in COVID vaccine-related deaths has unfolded. There is an increase in excess mortality attributed to the COVID vaccine. Ironically, 3 years later, the mainstream media is now reporting, see Telegraph above, on COVID-related vaccine excess mortality. This is the unspoken truth. Excess mortality triggered by the COVID-19 vaccine 2020 to 2022. Below is a graph pertaining to excess mortality in Germany, all causes, which points to the deviation of observed mortality from expected mortality by age group in 2020, 2021, and 2022. Notice the upward shift in excess mortality in 2021 and 2022 following the rollout of the COVID vaccine, December 2020. This tendency is worldwide. Mainstream media disinformation. Back in 2021, the mainstream media played a key role in sustaining disinformation regarding the COVID vaccine. It was part of the propaganda apparatus. It was instrumental in sustaining the fear campaign, all done by our government. The mainstream media also provided legitimacy to the regime of censorship. Threats, penalties, dismissals of scientists and scholars at major universities, the firing of doctors and nurses at hospitals for telling the truth, not to mention the insidious role of big money foundations in the bribing and computation of politicians in more than 190 countries and more. People worldwide have lived through this crisis. Many lives have been destroyed. Without media censorship and suppression of the truth, this crisis would not have occurred. Does the population of the Telegraph or COVID vaccine-related excess mortality point to fundamental changes in regards to the mainstream media, namely a tendency toward the lifting of censorship? We have worked relentlessly on behalf and in solidarity with our prospective communities, nationally and internationally. This crisis affects humanity in its entirety, namely the planet's 8 billion people who are the victims of fake science, fraud, and corruption. Profit in the billions of dollars are the driving force behind the diabolical agenda. Killing is good business. What we are witnessing is a crime against humanity on an unprecedented scale, affecting the lives of the entire population of our planet. The WHO, as well as some 190 national governments, are complicit in COVID vaccine rollouts. They had the responsibility of canceling the vaccine. You know what the WHO wants? The WHO wants all vaccines to be based on the mRNA technology. Concurrently, the media, is the course of the last 3 years, has been spinning the lies on behalf of both government and Big Pharma. The official data pertaining to the vaccine-related deaths and adverse event is not mentioned. Pfizer has a criminal record of significance never mentioned by the media or acknowledged by our government. Pfizer is the only pharmaceutical company which has a criminal record with the U.S. Department of Justice. I actually spoke about that years ago. To consult the Department of Justice historic decision, click screenshots below. Pfizer to pay $2.3 billion for fraudulent marketing. How on earth can we trust Big Pharma vaccine conglomerate which pleaded guilty to criminal charges by the U.S. Department of Justice, including fraudulent marketing and felony violations of the Food and Drug and Cosmetic Act? Flashback to November 2020, fraudulent BBC report. This is the unspoken lie. A couple of weeks prior to the official launch of the mRNA vaccine in early November 2020, the BBC featured a timely COVID media report entitled, "COVID, Why is the Virus Such a Threat?" According to BBC, quoting the misquoting scientific opinion, the virus had developed a hit-and-run killer evolutionary tactic with a view to spreading the COVID-19 infection far and wide. Media propaganda is the BBC's responsible for mRNA vaccine-related deaths, ? The unspoken objective of this report by the BBC science correspondent James Gallagher was to scare the British public, sustain the fear campaign, while also promoting acceptance of the COVID mRNA vaccine. The article was based on the authoritative voice of Professor Lennard of Cambridge University, an infectious disease physician at Adderhokes Hospital, Cambridge. A simple virus has brought life as we know it to a screeching halt. We have faced viral threats before, including pandemics, yet the world does not shut down for every new infection or flu season. That's what it was. It was the flu season. So what is it about this coronavirus? What are the quirks of this biology that poses a unique threat to our bodies and our lives? According to Lennard, in the early stages of the infection, the virus is able to deceive the body if the virus behaves like a hit-and-run killer. The amount of virus in our body begins to peak the day before we begin to get sick, but it takes at least a week for COVID progresses to the point where people need hospital treatment. Yeah, remdesivir, ventilator, and death. This is a really brilliant evolutionary tactic. You don't go to bed, you go out and have a good time, says Professor Lennard at Cambridge University. So the virus is like a dangerous driver fleeing the scene. The virus has moved on to the next victim long before we either recover or die. COVID-19, the virus doesn't care who it infects. In stark terms, the virus doesn't care if you die. This is a hit-and-run virus. There is no COVID-19. There never was. It does peculiar and unexpected things to the body. BBC James Gallagher, October 22nd, 2020. COVID, why is the coronavirus such a threat? What rubbish. COVID, why is coronavirus such a threat? BBC. Answer, media disinformation and the fear campaign. The frivolous BBC reports personifies the so-called virus that does not care, with a view to creating panic, quoting the incisive statement of the Cambridge scientists who on the payroll of Big Pharma welcome trust. In turn, a hit-and-run virus, rather than the corrupt government, is blamed for having ordered the lockdown, March 11, 2020, imposed on 190 countries, which has created economic and social havoc worldwide. Who do we thank for this? Oh, I know. That dope with the brown shit on his face. With the bald spot at the top of his head, which he hides by flipping over hair. What is at stake in the criminalization of the mainstream media, having misled millions of people in the course of the last 3 years, thereby sustaining the lies of Big Pharma and the corrupt directives of politicians, not to mention the fraudulent statement of the Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros. He's a piece of shit. What's now happening in the BBC acknowledges that people are dying, but experts are not sure why. They don't know what the cause and reason is. Tens of thousands more Brits are dying. Experts not sure why. Well, I'll tell you why, because they rolled up their sleeves. Beware the conspiracy theories. The BBC accuses alleged conspiracy theorists of stating the COVID vaccine is not safe. That's because it isn't. In recent years, there's been a growth in online conspiracy theories which suggest vaccines like the COVID jabs are dangerous or ineffective. They're both dangerous and ineffective. Mr. Ward said he's worried that people may believe the conspiracy theories, but he insists they're just that. They're just conspiracy theories. What am I going on is the facts. He said all of the international evidence is that vaccines we give out in the UK are safe. They're highly effective and they'll protect you from some really horrible disease. At the same time, BBC describes SARS-CoV-2 virus as being involved in a conspiratorial hit-and-run killer evolution tactic. Criminality at the level of the entire planet. Some 14 billion doses of COVID vaccine have been administered worldwide. 1.75 doses per person for a world population of 8 billion. Had the media truthfully reported on the nature of the COVID vaccine and its devastating impact, millions of lives would have been saved. At this juncture, with the exception of Africa, 75% of the world population has already been vaccinated. There is no moving backwards. The government and health authorities in cahoots with Big Pharma were fully aware from the very onset the COVID-19 vaccine was conducive to an upward trend in mortality and morbidity. Doctors for COVID Ethics issued a broad statement in July 2021 based on the data of EU, EEA, Switzerland. More deaths and injuries from COVID-19 vaccines rollout than from previous vaccines combined since records began. Are you sort of getting the picture? Jay accused that gene-based vaccines are killing people. Governments worldwide are lying to you, the people to the population they purportedly serve. The signal of harm is now indisputably overwhelming and in line with universally accepted ethical standards for clinical trials. Doctors for COVID Ethics demand that the COVID-19 vaccination program be halted immediately worldwide. Continuation of the program in the full knowledge of ongoing serious harm and deaths to both adults and children constitute crimes against humanity, genocide for which those found responsible or complicit will ultimately be held personally liable. Shouldn't that include Donald Trump? The Pfizer confidential reports. Another important document which was available to national health authorities in the U.S. was the confidential report by Pfizer. The report, which was made public under Freedom of Information Act, October 2021, is a bombshell. Pfizer's secret report on the COVID vaccine beyond manslaughter. The evidence is overwhelming. The vaccine should be immediately withdrawn worldwide. The vaccine was launched in mid-December 2020. By the end of February 2021, Pfizer had already received more than 1,200 reports of deaths allegedly caused by the vaccine and tens of thousands of reports of adverse events, including 23 cases of spontaneous abortions out of 270 pregnancies, and more than 2,000 reports of cardiac disorders. The data collected from mid-December 2020 to the end of February 21 unequivocally confirms manslaughter. Based on the evidence, Pfizer had the responsibility to immediately cancel and withdraw the vaccine. Murder, as opposed to manslaughter, implies criminal intent. From a legal standpoint, it is an act of murder applied worldwide to a targeted population of 8 billion people. Click here to read the complete Pfizer report. I told you, folks. And I warned people as much as I could, but the problem is I don't have an audience. And I haven't had an audience for a long time. You need to take a look at this clip. You need to pass it along to your like-minded friends. And whatever you do, don't take the shots. You know what they're going to come out with now, don't you? The bird flu shots. That's what's going to be next on the agenda. And I'm pretty certain the government will do what it did before. They'll mandate it because they can't kill us fast enough. You think not? Think what you like. I do. I can't do this alone, folks. And nobody does for you what I do they?